Hey guys and gals, how's it going? Welcome to Kaiser's Castle. Take a seat on my big orange couch. Grab yourself a coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation. Today, me and Baz are going to cover a couple subjects, and it's going to be a very good time. I think you'll have a very good show today, just like you did with Craig and I. We're going to touch on a few things that are current, two things specifically. We'll start out talking about people playing stupid games and winning stupid prizes. And then we'll talk about countries playing stupid games and winning stupid prizes. That being Iran trying to siege an English vessel. Just happened. So, within this week. So we're going to start that out. And let's start out with the sad fact of some lunatic. And Baz will be able to comment once I set it up. This lunatic out in, I can't even remember where it is. It's somewhere out west. Idiot decides to throw incendiary device, hit an ice vehicle, and then try to throw some, I guess, at some sort of tank, either petroleum, like heating oil or propane tanks. You can't tell by the news media because they just don't know what the hell they're talking about. So I take everything with a grain of salt. And then he forced, and I'm sure they said he had a rifle. I'm sure this moron probably pointed his rifle at these four agents that came out that are all suspended on temporarily suspended while the investigation's going on. And which isn't doing them any good, and it's not doing their families. And Lord knows this maniac lunatic. Notice how I'm not going to mention his name because I don't give glory to people that are morons. And during Craig and my show, we talked it would be good if, because the John Brown Society and the Oath Keepers were just talking guns. And wouldn't that be interesting if the Second Amendment saved the First Amendment and people started talking? And I guess the sad fact is this guy was like a 65-year-old, probably loser in life, probably very bitter. And so I'm not going to paint with a broad brush on the left like they like to do to the right. I'll call him the lunatic that he is. And he played a stupid game, and he won a stupid prize. Your thoughts there, Baz?
Yeah, he's well, obviously he got fucking ventilated, mate, so he won the ultimate prize of being stupid. Before we go on with the show, brother, I'd like to congratulate you on your 200th show the other day with Craig. It was an immense show. I enjoyed listening to it, and here's to another 200 more, mate. Um, yeah,
Thank you.
so yeah, anytime, brother. It's always a pleasure to be on these and voice my opinion and just have a good, debate, a bit of banter with you. So, yeah, this guy that's obviously tried to damage or destroy this ice sort of asset um, has not thought through his actions. He's not thought that he'd be going to become a martyr, and I hope he doesn't become a martyr. And people start wearing fucking t-shirts with his name on and all that crap. But when you're doing things like that, you're launching incendiary devices, assets, and things like that. Especially at propane tanks, they have obviously BLEVE, boil liquid expansion vapor release, or something. I can't remember what it really calls. Basically, a big fucking explosion. People are going to die.
Right.
Once you do that, you start encroaching into the rules of engagement. You know what I mean? So force can be met with force, and if you're endangering other people's lives, like he did, obviously the authorities or everybody has got the law of the common law of self defence, and engaging force with force. Um, and again, I've not looked too much into it. You probably know more than I do, brother. But again, if he's been carrying a weapon system, has he been pointing that weapon system at the ICE agents or authorities? So there's a couple of reasons why he's had holes put in him with high velocity pieces of metal. Uh, and all saying that nobody deserves to die, but if you're going to carry out stupid actions, like you say, play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes, you know. And I think that's all I'm going to say on that matter, anyway.
Oh yeah, no, I agree, brother. It's you made some valid, very good points. I mean, we don't know the real facts. The reports probably not even been posted, on what exactly happened. But of course, the media runs with a certain narrative. But like I said, I'm not going to do to the left what they love to do to the right. So I'm not going to paint them with a broad brush, I'd love to do it. I'd love to say this is what communists do, but I don't know the specifics of it. I just know that he was a moron. That's a fact. And he won the titty prize for being a moron. And, that's the final sleep, the big dirt nap. And maybe feel sorry for his family because he may have a decent family. He may have no family. Who knows? I don't know anything about the man, and I'm not going to say his name or give him any props. So let's traverse away from that subject. I think we've touched on it enough, and that's all the time I wanted to give it. Let's go in depth a little bit before we get to the main topic of today, which we're going to carry on from Craig and my show. I wanted to have you on, but man, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was sleepy drunk by the time me and Craig hung up, man. I was so fucking tired. You have no idea. And we did it like it, because he's on the West Coast and I'm on the East Coast. We did it at like, I don't know, 2:30 or 3. And my wife even came home while we were doing it. That's how long it took. And I was just tired, man. And you could tell I was out of it. I was just like tired as hell. Anyways, the point is, the interesting point is, let's talk about the Iranian attempted siege of a English-flagged vessel, which probably had Englishmen and probably some contractors on there. I'd love to know the nitty-gritty because I'm sure that you're the man who knows.
Yeah, so sort of the background to this was the British, well, the British Navy had intercepted an Iranian oil tanker called the Grace One that was heading for Syria. And obviously, there's international sanctions against Syria that they can't obviously get crude oil, especially from people like Iran. Now, obviously, the Iranians, as we know, and we've touched on previously, are one of the biggest sponsors of Islamic extremist terrorism in the world, along with the Saudis. Let's be honest, the Saudis are involved in it at some point.
And under Obama, we had the Obama administration funding ISIS. I mean, let's not be neophytes on this. It was a sad thing where you have U.S. British forces fighting in Syria and Iraq with the CIA's forces, ISIS, and that's a known fact. But yeah, I mean, we're a sponsor of it. Saudis are, Israel's are. It's funny, during the whole ISIS thing. Do you remember that colonel who was an Israeli Mossad agent, but he was in the Iraqi, I believe it was the Iraqi military, quote unquote, and when he had to go to a hospital, they discovered that he was Israeli. So, I mean, that's some funny stuff, man. I mean, everybody in that region, nobody's got clean hands. But anyways, go on with the story, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this Grace One was heading for a refinery in Syria. I can't remember the name of the refinery now. But again, it was seized by the British Navy. Okay, we had roughly about 30 Royal Marines, VBSS'd it, and we've basically seized this vessel. Now, obviously, the Iranians aren't too happy with this, and then they started threatening UK shipping, saying, "Okay, we're gonna take action against the British for what they've done." They're basically, again, they're using this word, "Oh, the British have committed piracy" and things like that, whatever they want to call it. So, it was only, I can't remember, it was a few days ago that there was a British oil tanker owned by British Petroleum (BP),
right,
that was basically being hounded by Revolutionary Guard fast attack craft. So they quickly got on the radio and said, "Look, we've got Iranian vessels that are conducting hostile actions against us. They aren't boarding, but it looks like there's going to be some kind of action taken." And the British Navy, that was in the region with the combined task force down there. That's run, I think it's headed up by the US, but its involvement was with 33 different nations. And obviously the British Navy are quite one of the biggest players in there, apart from the Americans. So because it was a British vessel, and the closest vessel to it was one of Her Majesty's ships, it went quickly to the scene and then started shadowing this British vessel until it was in safer waters. And obviously, as soon as it tipped up, these Revolutionary Guard Corps boats quickly fucked off, if you know what I mean, because they know that the HMS Montrose, that was it, basically a frigate, had turned up and pointed all its heavy weapon systems at these little boats, and they just thought better of it. So it's basically an escalation of tensions in that region. Are we going to see more attacks against British vessels? I would dare say they're going to step up the pressure until they want this Grey Swan, their tanker, released. And our Foreign Secretary turned around and did say, look, we will release your vessel if this crude oil is not heading for Syria. So I think that the Iranians need to sort of come up with a story quickly, or they're not getting this tanker back with all its crude oil on board. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from there. It's obviously the Iranians that are creating tension in the region. To what end, we don't know. Whether it's going to lead into something else, but we'll see. Obviously, so that they've not only pissed off the US, they're now pissed off the British Navy. And obviously, all you got to do is ask the Argentinians what happens when you start messing around with British shipping, because they learned the hard way, and we'll gladly tell it to the Iranians.
Indeed, the Falklands proved that out. And if I remember right from my history, the one Omani conflict that the Brits came in, Omani Special Forces are still trained by the SAS, if memory serves.
Yep, correct.
And they, when they threatened certain assets during that time, the Omanis even moved into it. So, I mean, also, I guess we're leaving out some players like the Emirates, the Emiratis, UAE, in other words, the Kuwaitis. I mean, the whole area right over there is just so tribal. And honestly, I think I said it on one of my shows. I think it was the Pledge of Allegiance show, where and that was one that I woke up late at night and I heard the news and saw that about them banning the Pledge of Allegiance somewhere in Wisconsin. It's a suburb of Wisconsin, if memory serves. I just can't think of it. And like I said, I don't want to give them publicity either. But yeah, the Quds Force are definitely active. The Quds Navy, you got to remember the IRGC, the Iranian Republican Guards Force, Corps, whatever. They are all run, and I gave a little bit of credit to what's his name. Not going to mention his name now, but I think that he's playing some brinksmanship and not being an honest player. And it sort of saddens me because I thought he had a stable mind. But I guess he doesn't. He's gotten infected with jihad and probably opium and hash. So that's my 2 cents on that. And I think they will learn just like they did the last time, and just like as you said, the Argentinians did when they tried to take the Falklands and disrupt shipping. And people forget this. They tried to press the Falklanders, who were British subjects, into their national sovereignty. And they weren't having it, and it caused England to mobilize. And that was at a time when their navy, England was at the lowest point with their navy, I think, if memory serves.
Yeah.
And they even they took a couple English vessels, like cruise ships, and put like landing metal over like the different parts of the ship. And that's where the Harrier jump jet was proven to be a viable and a valuable asset, which the Marine Corps also adopted. So it's kind of interesting, that fact. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was the Argentinians always, they still cry to this day that the sinking of their Belgrano battleship was a war crime. because we torpedoed it in international waters. Um, Most of the sailors on board perished, and this ship went to the a few thousand meters under the South Atlantic. But again, we've been doing this game a long time. The British, you know, since I mean, God knows how long, good few hundred years anyway. Spanish Armada and all that good stuff. We've sort of we're the sort of masters of naval warfare, if you know. Because we again look at the size of the empire we had. We didn't get that through ground forces; it was through our the Royal Navy. So we've been doing it for a long time, and for the Argentinians to try and say, "Oh, but this Belgrano, this Argentinian, their main battleship, their flagship of their navy, was just cruising happily on the coast of the Falklands in international waters is quite sort of unbelievable that to think that they weren't going to send this into the international waters, also the national waters of the Falkland Islands, and on the end of that is their international waters, British waters. I mean, sorry. Um, so yeah, it got sunk. They're crying about it, and again, it's going to reflect when we start torpedoing. If we do, and I hope it doesn't get that far, but we start sticking torpedoes into the side of Iranian warships, because again, they'll lose that battle. And it doesn't have to be surface ships. Again, we've got very sophisticated subsurface vessels where the Iranians have only got these little midget submarines that we used to cut around in the Second World War, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the next step is in this sort of regional tension.
Oh, I agree. I've got a meme. A brother of mine, David Miller, who runs Task Force Mindful, and it's an old Sun Tzu thing. It's my favorite quote from Sun Tzu: "Take nothing into the enemy's camp. Use only what you find there." Mindfulness, accountability, and conditioning. But I'm going to throw a meme that my brother Baz shared with me when he talked about 200 years. Independence Day is a terrorist holiday supporting cop killers, looters, and tax cheats. Red Lives Matter. Support the thin red line.
Back the
Back the
crown.
crown. So I just threw that up for some humor. You got to think, man. Everything is it's
Com-
absolutely perspective.
yeah, context.
Yeah, context and perspective. Now we'll get to the main part of the show. That's my favorite part. It's a quote by Richard Heckler. The path of a warrior is lifelong, and mastery is often simply staying on the path. And so I've got that meme up, and we can start talking about our key function today. I'll throw, let me see where the picture is, and I will throw it up. I'm sure everybody saw this when me and Craig were talking, but this is something. I think this is it right. No, that's not it. Right here. Yeah. On the right hand side, this is a part of my box. And we're going to cover a little bit of prepping. That just has my big box, and not the box I shared with you today. I'll throw that out here in a little bit, brother. And this, of course, since we're going here, this is coming from the war room at Kaiser's Castle, and we'll start talking about preparedness. And one of the things a lot of people, you and I were talking offline about this, everybody thinks you keep your stuff, with you. Sometimes the smarter move is to keep some of your stuff in different places. So I guess caching is a good way to come up with it. And let's cover that a little bit before we go on.
Yeah, I think, but before we start, sort of like go into it, it's always good to have that sort of mindset. Like I always say, prepping. Only sort of like 10% of it is having the gear. Everything else is being in that mindset of being aware of what's going on around you,
Yep.
um, picking up on the little nuances of, oh, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And prepping in the UK has taken off quite a bit. What with this Brexit bullshit? Because obviously there's your that remember the Millennium Bug? Oh, the world's gonna fucking collapse. Planes are gonna fall from the sky, and people started then. There was a massive sort of prepper surge. Then people stockpiling water and stockpiling food because they thought the world was going to switch off in 24 hours.
Yep, and then we
Um,
and then we had the 2012 Mayan calendar. All that
yeah,
goofiness. I've loved watching everybody freak out. I mean, look, every man, because of responsibilities to their family, should have a certain amount of preparedness. But when you go psycho nutso and you start, just let me get 500,000 rounds of ammunition and 20 AKs, 20 M16s or ARs, whatever. It's just a bullshit move, and
mm,
you don't need that. The basics are covered. But I mean, you have your different laws and stuff you have to abide by, and so do we. But yeah, go on with that, brother. And also, I agree with you. Situational awareness is key because a situation can change. Well, you and I both know this in a blink of an eye. But if you're aware of your surroundings, more than likely you're going to get some sort of key to know that some fuckery is afoot. Head on, brother.
yeah, it's an element of reactive proactiveness instead of that reactiveness. To a certain extent, you're always going to be reactive to whatever's happening around you. But just having things in place, being proactive, it's sort of like the mantra of the prepper. Yeah, a good thing I've always sort of kept in mind was it's a quote by General George Patton, and he said something along the lines of prepare for the unknown by studying how others in the past have coped with the unforeseeable and the unpredictable. So it's always learning lessons. And as preppers, if you know other preppers, it's always good to speak to them, see what they've got. And we're lucky. We're very lucky. We've had a blessed sort of past, if you know what I mean, when it comes to the world of prepping and survivalism. It's because we've spent time in the military, we've spent time in law enforcement. We know how the bigger world works, and we can take a lot of lessons from that. I touched on I can't remember if it was on one of your shows or whether it was offline, about a course I did many, many years ago in Bavaria, the Combat Survival School, the LERP School. I know
Yep.
some of your
Yep.
some of your SF guys go there, and there was some lessons I learned there, not from the actual instructors there, but from other students there. Because when you go and do a part of this course, the escape and evasion sort of element of it, you're paired up with someone not from your own nation. So I wasn't paired up with any of the guys from my recce team. It was from other nations, and I was paired up with a Danish frogman who spoke very little English, but I took lessons from him that became life saving lessons further down the line. And it was something so simple. And I've always carried that on to this day, and I've passed that on to younger guys that I had under my command. I was like, right, get all your kit out. And I'm not one of these. I wasn't one of these idiots where they're doing kit inspections. Why haven't you got these socks folded in this way? And I've touched on it before. I'm a strong advocate of if you don't have it, you're the one that's going to suffer. I don't want to hear you bitching about it.
Yep.
You take what you want because you're going to carry it. If you want to, travel light, fight light, and all that good stuff, that's on you. Yeah, you can move fast, but at the end of the day, if this operation doesn't go on for 24 hours, it goes on for 72, 30, and beyond, you're the one that's going to suffer. And that's sort of the mindset I've always had. And like I was saying before we actually came online, is I work at 4 stages in my sort of prepping. And my first stage is obviously EDC. Now, obviously, your EDC depends. Let's base it on your states. It depends on your gun laws over there. Obviously, different states, even different counties have got different sort of gun laws over there. Where you can
Cities, local. Yep.
where you can CCW, you can open carry, what type of weapon systems you can carry. You know, and I know even though it's crazy, like a lot of people like rip into the UK saying, "Oh, you guys aren't free. You've got all these laws and licenses." Well, as a prepper, it's probably easy for me. Guess what? I can collect fucking rainwater, and I don't need a license to do so. It's different laws will dictate what sort of like level you're prepping. So when it goes on to your EDC, my EDC is it's pretty simple. It's not like a belt kit with all that good stuff on. Like you see some of these like really serious preppers, survivalists that go and build their own log cabin in the mountain. It's a functional EDC. It's usually mobile phone, one of those slimline batteries. Because people say, yeah, well, if the mobile phone system goes down, look, that it's not going to be the only time that's going to happen is if the Russian slash Chinese slash whoever else, insert whatever rogue state nation, detonates an EMP. You know what I mean? Otherwise, the chances of your mobile phone working are pretty high.
Yeah,
And it's not just for communications. It's everything you can get on there. You know,
they may
I've
take out a tower, but the thing is, as long as you're mobile, you may ping off another tower. At
yeah,
least in the U.S. and Europe, it's built that way, a system of redundancy. And I'm glad that you brought up cell phones and a spare battery because they even have the solar powered spare batteries. I have two.
yeah,
And the interesting thing about those is there's another item, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it goes on the back of your cell phone and it becomes an antenna. I can't think of what it's called. But it basically, if you have the antenna, your wife has the antenna, your kids have the antenna, you guys can still communicate without cell towers. It becomes almost a GRS system. You
mm,
know, the little radios you can buy at Walmart or whatever you guys have equivalent
yeah,
for like talking. They're like little walkie talkies that cost $100 or $200 for two of them, whatever it is.
yeah,
And it's a GRMS, I think it is. Anyways, um, the the whole purpose of it is now you have an ability to communicate with your family, your friends, whatever that are local to you within a certain range, and that could save. Let's say you're at a state. Let's say you're over at Wimbledon watching the tennis game since you're in England, right? Just for instance, you're going to watch tennis and your daughter, your son, your brother, your wife, your cousin, your uncle, whoever you're with, you give them that antenna and all of a sudden something happens to the cell service and something happens at the game. Well, you can get on there and still communicate with them and say, hey, I'm going to meet you at exit 5. I'm guessing, dude. I've never been to Wimbledon, so you can laugh at me all you want in England, folks.
neither of our buddy, neither of us. So
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah, okay. So my point being is, you can meet up. Oh, you're at the snack bar right now? I'll meet you at north exit, out of the stadium. Exit north 5, in 5, I don't know, however it's put, but you can actually communicate with them and say I'm on the way. You're telling them, and especially if you have young ones, they may be freaking out with people panicking. And remember the key. I can't remember. I remember the quote. I can't remember the man who said it. But it's when you. Oh, I do remember it is. It's a poem, and it's called "If," and then you'll be a man, my son. If you can keep your head when everybody about you is losing theirs, then you'll be a man, my son. So that's the end of it. But anyways, so go on with it, brother. You were flowing good, and I'm sorry to hijack it.
No, that's all right, bro. It's your show. No, yeah, your EDC. It's got to be a practical EDC, and you can have like, what I mean, Kimber 1911s hanging off your belt and blah blah blah. But that's a very specific tool for a very specific job. It's all that distance, keeping threats back, and the only time you're going to really use that is if it can't be used to boil water. It can't be used to do other things. It's there for a reason, and it's there for a good reason. Don't get me wrong. Like I've always said, massive Second Amendment supporter, and everything that comes along with that. My EDC consists of very few items: mobile phone, spare battery, one of those slimline spare batteries that you can just plug in, a multi tool, and on my keys I've got sort of like a miniature torch. I've got things that can, one of the little multi-tool cards that you can crack doors with and shit like that. So it's a functional, very sparse EDC. My Series 2 of my EDC, I say I work at 4 stages, is my day sack, my military day sack. And in that, it's got basically enough kit for me to last um, probably a good 36, 48 hours. Remember, I said I come from a blessed past where I've lived out of a bag for the majority of my life, being a soldier and everything that comes with that. So I know what to pack. And again, I've got a solar
Right.
charger in there that basically you fold out and it just sits on top of your pack. You don't have to stop; it just sits on top of your pack, and you can just plug your phone into it while you're walking or traveling wherever, you know. And in there is water. And obviously, I've changed it up since I've been in the military because I'm now thinking of more of a civilized, civilian sort of orientated bug out bag. Yeah, so there's all that good stuff in there that I need. Warm clothing, waterproof, spare socks, a little bit of food to keep me on the go. And then my stage three is quite a large gorilla box, and that has got again things in there that I would be able to last for quite a while. It's got shelter in there. It's got a couple of sleeping systems in there, rations, a breakdown sort of crossbow type of deal. Because again, I've also got breakdown like sort of two rifles and things like that. But I'm thinking longevity now. This a crossbow, it doesn't make a noise. You know, it doesn't need ammunition because what I shoot I can get back all the time. You know what I mean? It's reusable. So that's the reason for that. And I've just got all
And
my other things in there. Yeah, go on, brother.
and if the bolt breaks, you can always make another one out of a branch of a tree and
Yeah,
reuse the tips. I mean, I totally get that. The one thing on your EDC I wanted to suggest, and honestly, you can find them online, and I'll suggest it to everybody. Gerber made a product called the Artifact, and it hangs on your key ring. And it's got like a little pry bar, a little nail puller, a bottle opener, and it comes with like an X-Acto blade knife, and then on the other side it's got either a flat, by the way they designed it, it can be a flat or a Phillips head screwdriver. And there's other uses, but it also has a beveled top to make it a pry bar. You
yeah,
can look it up if you guys want to see what an artifact looked like, but that's an awesome thing. It can fit on your key ring, and it adds very little weight. And of course, it has a little plastic container with like 3 extra X-Acto knives. And everybody who knows anything about hunting, just like you do, and just like I do, knows that the quickest way besides cardboard to dull your knife is going through a deer's fur or a rabbit's fur.
yeah.
And so you can at least make your initial incisions into the animal with that X-Acto blade, and you're not destroying your primary blade of your pocket knife, right?
Yeah, yeah, certainly, certainly. Again, because cutting through hair, that your hair is made the same material as your teeth is. It's enamel at the end of the day, which is one of the worst things that you can use to blunt on a knife. Um, yeah, so I've got my stage three, which is my gorilla box, and I can operate out of that for quite a large amount of time. And then my stage four is it's all off-site stuff. You know, I'm currently living away from where I was actually born and brought up until I was a young adult, and I've always been a prepper. And even then, I was making stashes and caches of things there. So I'm quite lucky that I've got things within a mile of my house, and then there's things 150 miles away that I only know the location of, if you know what I mean. And in there, it can range from everything from takedown bows, um, different weapons, which I won't go into, rations, which are like your version of the MRE, but the British Army one, and all stuff like that to keep me going. It depends, obviously,
Right.
what I'm after, and obviously what you've got to think of as well. And I'm thinking outside of my box now is if especially in the States where it's a lot bigger than the UK, is stashes of fuel and things like that, where petroleum is pretty much useless in a prepper situation purely because petrol hasn't got a very long shelf life. The octane sort of I can't think of the word. Basically the octane in petrol reduces over time. And I think
Starts
after
to
about
degrade, yeah.
after about 6 months or so, it starts becoming unusable. Where diesel where petrol basically breaks down and it becomes a sludge. You know, it starts
Yeah.
breaking down to its component elements. It becomes a sludge where diesel doesn't. The only thing that you need to worry about with diesel is it's actually biological matter, like this fungus or mold grows on top of diesel,
Yep.
which can degenerate diesel a little bit. So, but what you can do is you can, if that's on the surface, you can scrape that off. Diesel's pretty good for a good number of years. As long as it's sealed and it's kept correct, and water's not getting in there and it's not cross contaminating and all that good stuff.
Oh, you're
So
exactly right. There's a
yes,
product. I don't know if you guys have it over there. We have it here that can extend both of their lives called Stabil,
yeah,
Stabil.
we've got something like that over here.
Yeah, okay, that extends the shelf life of it. But the thing is, if you're gonna cache any kind of fuel source, the key is to rotate it, i.e., take your
Yeah,
ATV, whatever it is, out there every once in a while, drain one of the items, take it somewhere and refill it. Always try to get the highest octane in anything if you're using MoGas or regular gasoline. That MoGas is just a military term, folks. Um, if you want to put some, another thing that will help it is over here we have a product called Turbo Blue, which is a racing fuel, which is super heavy octane,
yeah,
and put a little bit of that in each can, along with some stable. It'll extend it, but like you said, it's finite. It degrades over time.
yeah,
So rotate, and same with water. I mean, think about it. If you're storing water in containers, you got to dump it every once in a while. There's a liquid oxygen product. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it actually puts not liquid oxygen. I guess that's the wrong term for it, terminology. But it oxygenates the water, and so you're not having to add chlorine and get the chlorine taste. So, anyways, I just wanted to interject those two things for the American public. And if you have something that's the equivalent in England, I'd love you to pimp that stuff out for people to look at.
yeah. I don't really know the name of it because I don't really cash fuel, if you know what I mean. It's if I don't know whether it's something I'd look into, but I'm under the guys like going back to what you said there about obviously rotating stuff like that. Also, what you've got to remember is the more times that you visit this cache, it raises the chances and raises the percentage of that cache being discovered by others. So something does
Yep.
happen and you're reliant on this cache and you're okay, I need to get this cache, I need to get here because it's got this and this in it, or I need to get there for whatever reason. You get there and it's been dug up or it's been opened, it's been discovered. So once you've got these caches, you need to make sure that what's in these caches isn't something that that is reliant on you going back every couple of weeks or every couple of months or every whatever. So your caches need to be, yes, you need to check on them. You need to make sure that there's no sort of there's no animals getting in there. There's no infestations. They haven't been discovered. They're still
Right.
secure. But to go back every so often, again, it's gonna compromise your cache because somebody will at some point see you doing it. Or why is he driving down this track?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, yeah, and all that good stuff. And so it's a security mindset as well when you've got these stashes. You're putting them in the places that are going to be not difficult to access, but no one can locate them. I'm quite lucky where I was brought up in the North Yorkshire Moors. For anybody who knows about anything about the North Yorkshire Moors, it's quite a expansive open space. Some beautiful countryside there, and there's lots of sort of deciduous and conifers and stuff like that, wood blocks everywhere. And all these have got fire breaks in them, really hard. You've been to the Black Forest, brother, haven't you, in Germany?
Oh, yeah, the Black Forest. And also in England, I went to, my wife and I, we both went to the U Forest. You know where that is
Yeah,
the UK.
yeah,
So, yeah, man, there's something about, look, I love the majesty of American forestry and the National Park Service, and that's another thing we can get into, I guess, during this time. Is we will get into it on train with what you have, and do it in a natural way that it doesn't put your safety in danger. And what I'll say just before we get into the depths of it, don't go out into the Black Forest. Don't go out into somewhere way far away to learn your survival skills, making fires, this, that, and the other. When I took my son on his first really cold weather, it was below zero. below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it was like 8 or 9 below zero, if memory serves. And there was snow on the ground. I said we're just building tarp tents. The only thing I brought out was I'm lucky I have a fire pit in my backyard. I brought out tarps, one tarp, no, two tarps. I lied to you, and I brought out a bunch of reflective blankets. Showed them how to arrange them to reflect the heat. Our below zero sleeping bags, and the only additional thing was cots to keep us off the ground so we wouldn't lose our heat through, not convection. Yeah,
Conduction.
conduction.
Is it
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, convection.
Yep. So, yeah, that was the whole purpose of that, and that way convection's negated because we have heat in front, and it's gonna keep rotating against that heat blanket that's hanging off the way I had it hung up. I think I got a picture somewhere, but I didn't have it for this show. I'll have to post it on another show with us. But we slept very comfortably and got up in the morning. But see, if something would have went wrong, we're still close to help. If you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you're trying to teach somebody something, that's faulty, because if problems happen, now you're going to be, or that person at least, is going to be incurring the cost of a helicopter ride instead of an ambulance ride. It just becomes a whole shit show if they have to get people mobilized to go there. It becomes an issue. So anyways, go on and keep going, brother. Like I said, I just wanted to jump in, and we can do that later. But let's start talking about, I guess I'll show that one picture of the one. This was my big box, and I'll show one that's able to be put in your vehicle.
Yeah, like what you said there. It's also it's not they're just not going to incur the short term cost, the monetary costs of whatever. Obviously, I'm thinking of the States now. The helicopter and the medical bills and all that stuff. It's the long term costs. It's going to knock confidence, and are they going to be wanting to become a prepper? Are they going to invest in that? Because again, it's like, look, I couldn't do it last time, so it's just basically fingers crossed that nothing fucking happens, because I couldn't even hack it that time when it was sort of like in inverted commas a peacetime scenario, if you know what I mean. So if you're building the confidence, like you were there with one of your sons, teaching them, they don't have to worry about the what ifs, because they're in the back garden or they're in the local sort of like a wood, a 20 minutes away from where you live,
Right.
where so it's a safe environment to train in, and you can build their confidence, you can build their skill level without that element of what if. And then once you're happy, and again it goes back to that mentor shit that we've spoken about before. It's once you're happy, it's like, okay, I'm happy with your skill level now, would you like to put your skill level to the test? And hopefully they say yes, and that's when you can go a bit further afield, and under that sort of guise of like, I'll shadow you, I'm not going to interrupt what you do, but you're going to do this, you know what I mean, I'll be there if you need me. And once you're happy with that, then they establish themselves, that's when they build on their foundation, their skill levels, and they, you know what I mean, and everybody has their own plan, and I'm starting to do it now. I've got a 10-year-old son, and I'm starting to do that now. I'm going in a few weeks. He goes, "Oh, Dad, can we go camping?" I said, "Yeah, not a problem, son, not a problem. But we're not taking tents. I'm taking shelters, you know what I mean, that I used in the army, and I'm going to show him how to put one of those up properly. I'm going to show
Like
him how to."
bashes.
Yeah. I'm going to show him how, because again, it's not always practical to carry around a tent. Where we call them ponchos or bashers, over
Right.
here. It's basically a waterproof square of material. I've seen some of your airborne guys have got pretty much similar to us. Waterproof material, comes with 4 or 6 bungees, and that's what we use. I've lived up there all over the world. I've used them in Norway to the jungles of Central America. It's the same piece of kit. So I know it's used and I'm comfortable using it. The last time I used one was about 2 weeks ago. You know, um, it's what you're comfortable with. And it's small and it's light. It only weighs a couple of kilos. And it's the size of sort of a single boot, if you know what I mean. So it can fit in a bag. If you've got a bigger box, you can get a couple in there for more than one person. Again, so I'm trying to teach him what he needs to survive in an environment that is his bedroom with his PlayStation outside of where there's no running water. Again, it's just teaching those basics, and it's sort of the basics that you've got to start with. Anybody, doesn't matter whether the 10-year-old or the 50-year-old. If nobody has any experience with prepping and surviving outside of the comfort of their own home, you've got to start with you know the basics: shelter, heat, water, food. And everything that comes after that is surplus to requirement. In reality, it's because once you're surviving, that's when you can start living after that.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
There was a really good book a long time ago written called "Great Living in Grubby Times" by a Special Forces guy, and of course you guys have the SAS Survival Handbook by John Lufty. I can't
Wiseman.
Wiseman,
I've,
yeah,
I've
and
actually that's with arm's reach. I'm actually touching that book now, the
awesome.
SES Survival Handbook.
Yep,
I've got a couple of versions of it. I've got the hardback version.
I
I've
do
got a
too.
small. I've got a small little pocket version. And what I was mentioning about the mobile phone there, I've actually got the mobile phone app as well, which you can get, and it's free. If you've got iPhone or whatever you've got, or Samsung. I know you can get it off sort of the App Store there, and it's free, and it's a digital version of the SES Survival Handbook.
Yep,
But I've got like the pocket copy in my bug out bag. Because it's a lot of it I know, and I use it for sort of more sort of identification processes with berries and things like that. Because yeah, you can be one of these hardcore 110% preppers slash survivalists that know everything about the flora and fauna of your nation. Where people that don't live that life, where they're not getting out of bed in the morning and filtering water and pickling fucking beans or whatever they do, and smoking meat every single day, we don't know that stuff. We know a small percentage. I know enough to go out there and survive, but we don't know everything. So it's always good to have reference. And again, like I said, the electronic in the palm reference might be only good for certain situations where I can go old school and pull out a book, and go like that's that. I'm happy with that. Again, so it's starting off with the basics, and everybody who goes into prepping, some can profess that they know a lot more than others, and the chances are they do, but nobody knows everything.
that's right. Anybody who says they're an expert, I run from. I tell this to all my students, and I'm no expert. Everybody's practicing survivalism. Prepping is that new term because back in the 90s, you're not in the U.S., but Bill Clinton and Hillary did a real good job of painting anybody who used the term survivalist as some racist, right? Which is bullshit.
Right wing, yeah, like
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
Ruby Ridge type of deal.
yeah, and it was all bullshit. And of course, if what's his name was such a racist, then why did the federal government have to give him $6 million in a settlement after they released him from prison? Because he sued their asses and got out of prison. Jerry Spence went after the federal government, and the ATF had to pay. They killed his son. They killed his wife. It doesn't bring them back, but that proves anybody who thinks federal government's got clean hands, think again. Now, two things I wanted to bring up real quick. There's a company. The gentleman who owns its name is John McCann. Okay, and it's called Survival Resources. What this gentleman does is, if the military orders, let's say, 6 million Flint strikers or something like that, right? Well, the company will actually make like 10 million or whatever, right? So John basically goes to those companies after they've fulfilled their contract and says, how much if I buy X amount of them? And they give him a price, and it's the lowest cost stuff you'll find, and it's good quality stuff, and he's even invented a couple things. But survival resources, I will always tell people to look at first for pricing. Just giving a shout out to him, and he wrote several really good books. And you guys can look up his books. John McCann, MC capital CANN. John McCann. He's out of New York. I don't know if he's still operating a survival school or not, but he's a quality individual and a good man. And the other thing I'll say is I just gave away all these books to a brother of mine, a military brother, man, and they were Ranger Rick Cerno's guides, and it was just on field living. And fieldcraft is something that it's like this, as simple as this. Like if you didn't have Brasso to shine up your brass, no problem. Use some toothpaste and mix it with some ashes from a cigarette, and then rub your brass and watch it get shiny. Just little things like that. It's basic fieldcraft. I just wanted to use that as an example. But yeah, man, there's so much out there that nobody can know anything or everything. And how many times there was a guy in Scotland, in the UK, if I remember right, it was only a couple years ago, and he was a survival quote-unquote expert, and he went out there and they found him dead in a railway little box or whatever you guys got for your workers there, that when they come by they can get warm in temporarily. And he had died from, he was so cold that he set a fire in there, shut the doors, trying to get warm, and he asphyxiated himself. So, I mean, this kind of shit happens. You can look it up. I can't think of the guy's name, or I would tell you. And he was considered one of England's major survival experts. I just hate that term expert in anything. Firearms, survivalism, any of it. It just, the terminology, you can be very proficient and good, but still you can die from being overconfident, being under-equipped. Here's a prime example with me. I know we've talked about it. I don't think we've talked about it offline or online. Now, with my military experience, dude, I went to the Guard after I got out of the Marine Corps. I think I've told this story before. And we're going out. It was a beautiful day when we left. It was like September. It was lovely, and the forecasts were like lovely for the next. And it was only like a 2-day op. And I go out there, minimal. I wanted to do the survival thing, minimal shit, right? I just took my, at this time, Gore-Tex. I took my Gore-Tex with me. I think I might have had a scarf. I didn't have a sweater. I mean, there was a lot of stuff I didn't take that I should have had. The temperature dropped, it snowed, and it rained first. And we were just one state over, man. And I am telling you, it was the worst 2 days of my life. And after that, I became an overpacker.
Yeah, that's again. I always have been, and I think that's just the soldier in me, that we've all always sort of carried too much shit. I know that they're trying to sort of breed into this like mentality now of fight light. Because if you're carrying less kit, you can walk further, you can move quicker, you can fight for longer. So that's what they're trying to get into now. That's it's a doctrinal change that you're never going to sort of like breed that out, especially the old and bold soldiers. That's going to take a number of years to come in, where guys are carrying the least amount of kit. It's more apparent when you're sort of like in heat, thinking of like Afghanistan, Iraq, especially places like the jungle, where if you're carrying lots of kit, it's going to hinder you massively. I've worked in quite a lot of environments before, and obviously like the places like the jungle are one of the hardest places to operate in, purely because it's so difficult to navigate. It's so hot. It's just a really aggressive environment. So we try and carry as least kit as possible because it just takes so long to get anywhere. But when it comes to being a prepper, you haven't got helicopters or armored fighting vehicles or whatever to carry this shit around. So what you've got is what you've got. It's gone on your back. and how long can you operate like that for? How long can you survive like that for? But again, there's sort of that our sort of like mentality of just suck it up. I've got it. I know it's there. Rather than I wish I had this, because it's never usually something small. Or it might be something small, but that is, for example, it does. I saw. I should have sent you it. There was a meme that I saw of a couple in a fallout shelter, and it's like one of these drawings from a newspaper or something like that, and one of the cartoons, just a stick drawing, and there's the stereotypical wife having to go to the husband. Like, Gerald, the fallout shelter was a good fucking idea, but you should have brought a fucking can opener. You know what I mean? They're surrounded by cans, and they're all really skinny because they've been under this fallout shelter for years. So it's something that's so stupid and simple as a can opener. You need to make sure that you've got what you've got, and what you've got is going to be useful and all that good stuff. There's no point in carrying 300 meters of rope. If you're going to carry rope, why do you need 300 meters of rope? On your backpack.
Right.
It weighs a lot. That's number one. You're going to be carrying this rope around everywhere. And when you're going to use this rope, you might use it once for this one thing. Is it better to source it from elsewhere? You can't carry everything. Do you want it in a stash? But that stash, again, that you might be going out of the way. You might not be going towards your stash because the circumstances might dictate. You might be moving away from your stash, be it from thinking of California, thinking of the brush fires there, flooding, fallout, whatever. So what you need to have. Yeah, go on.
That's a good topic. Are you going to bug out or bug in?
Yeah.
Sometimes bugging in is a better choice. That means you stay in your own home. So you do have to have a certain amount in your own place, your domicile. Bugging out's a whole different scenario where, like you said, as a soldier, but your house is your castle, just like mine is, just like yours is. It amazes me, Baz, how many people I've actually run into dudes that are like. A matter of fact, there's a folks, go to a place called Survival Blog. James Wesley Rawls is the guy who runs it. You'll see people. This is why I guess at the beginning of the show I was saying about me and Craig's show, and I brought this up too, I believe, on that show. You'll see people on the left and the right politically, but they're all learning from each other how to make the best of a bad situation. And honestly, survival, folks, is nothing more, just like I said on the show with Craig, and Baz knows this too. I was a moron, a liberal, a communist, whatever you want to call me, I was at that time. And a buddy of mine, he's like, hey, I was like, yeah, man, I'm going to sell my guns and walk the earth like Kung Fu. That was what I wanted to do. I just wanted to check out the earth and check out the places. This is after the war in Kingdom Saudi Arabia, or before, I can't remember. Before or after, I can't remember when the conversation actually took place. I just know it happened while I was there. Anywho, the point is, he's like, why are you going to sell your guns, man? You got a Second Amendment right. And I'm like, oh, you must be one of them fucking survivalists. And he goes, Shuff, you're an Eagle Scout. And I go, yeah. He goes, where are you from? And now I'd known this guy for 2 years, Baz. And I guess I never told him where I was from. Imagine that. I didn't even realize I hadn't done that until he said something. And he goes, okay. I said, Columbus, Ohio. And he goes, oh, I bet in the trunk of your car you have salt or sand. You have a shovel. You probably have a candle or a flashlight. He goes, and probably a Hershey bar and or some other little snacks in your trunk. And he just starts listing a blanket, this, that, and the other, or two. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you'd be a fool not to. And he looks at me and he says, you're a fucking survivalist. He goes, all it is being prepared, just like as an Eagle Scout and a Boy Scout, you're supposed to be prepared for something that might happen. You might get a flat tire. You might have to stay all night, your car, on the road. And it got me thinking. And what's the clearest way to change somebody's ideological opinion of the state has to take care of themselves? Show them that there is a time when they have to take care of themselves, and it changes their thinking. Is your thought?
Yeah, exactly. That one sort of it's that one instance, and it might be something crazy. It might be like you said there. It might be a flat tire. It might be you've got stranded because of snow. Where I'm originally from, that's a reality. There's only sort of like three roads going into the town where I live, and all of them go through sort of like some quite, you know what I mean. When it's in the winter, it's quite hostile sort of terrain, quite hostile environment. Or it might be something really small and crazy where you know your wife has locked you out the house, left her keys somewhere, and it's all right. I've got this. Or I've got this. Or it's just one of the little instances where they look at you and go, that raised eyebrow, like I'd have been fucked if you weren't there.
Right.
I would have had to smash a window, or might have had to do this, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's that one little instance where people then look at you and go, "Okay, he's onto something here." And you see it quite a lot, especially nowadays with this Brexit going on, where people are starting to flap, and a lot of people are getting in touch. Only about 2 or 3 days ago, one of my friends got in touch with me, back from again where I'm from, and he said, mate, do you still gather all that shit together? So what are you talking about, mate? He goes, oh, I mean, when you're like hoarding all this shit. I said, I'm not a hoarder, I'm a prepper. I have things in place for when something goes wrong. And he's like, okay, tell me about it. I mean, it was only a 20-minute conversation. And I said, okay, think about this, think about this, think about this. Canned goods, you know what I mean? Bottled water and all that stuff. I said, but you don't need to worry. Look at, like you said, 2012. Look at the Millennium Bug. It was all a non-event, and that's what's going to happen with Brexit. We aren't going to sort of like have a Hurricane Katrina moment across the entire fucking British Isles, you know. And I sent you that meme earlier, about it's just Black Friday. People fighting over TV, and it says if people would do this over a TV, what would they do when the food runs out? And it's sort of like that shit the fan moment, that zombie apocalypse moment, because everybody uses that zombie apocalypse as sort of the pinnacle
Yeah,
of
it's gayness, right? I know.
yeah. But it's that zombie apocalypse. To me, when I say the zombie apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse can mean anything that's going to bring society to its knees. You know what I mean? That's just like that's the Armageddon. That's the pinnacle, isn't it? Anything else? I mean, you look at the Ebola outbreak. Now, what people don't realise is these people getting off airplanes in the US and the UK and all over the
Yep.
Western world carrying fucking Ebola, you know. And as we've found out only over the past sort of like 10, 15 years, that some of these illnesses that you went to your doctor or wherever, and you just all you did was take a course of antibiotics. Then the antibiotics they were using then are now useless. You're having to use these sulfur antibiotics just to combat this quite common virus or bug, and it's going to get to the point where somebody walks off a plane with Ebola or hantavirus or H1Z1, or whatever it's fucking called, um, and it's not effective, the antibiotics. And then before you got it, a good film to watch, a good movie to watch is Contagion with Gwyneth Paltrow and what's his name out of the Bourne Identity, Matt Damon. It's not an unbelievable fucking film, It's quite a believable film where it's just a freak of DNA where this illness, and she brings it back, and then people just start dying. And obviously she's patient zero, and it just spreads from there to sort of quite a big epidemic. But also you got to think on the back of that, smallpox. You know what I mean? The weaponized smallpox. It's known fact that terrorist organisations, so when I say terrorist organisations, I'm not talking about the 2-bit fucking organisations that you see localised in sort of Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm talking about Al Qaeda and people like that are actively trying to get hold of weaponised diseases, you know, or trying to get them weaponized. So there's that sort. That's what I use as zombie apocalypse type shit. Is things that are going to bring our nation to its knees, and that could be anything. And let's be honest, at some point, it is going to happen somewhere in the world. One of these offshoots, these terrorist groups, and I'm not going to use for Islamic extremism because it could be anybody, is going to poison a water supply. It's going to detonate a dirty bomb, or it's going to do something on the lines where all of a sudden a city like London or New York or Los Angeles or Birmingham or Miami or somewhere like that is going to be impacted quite greatly, where all of a sudden you've got a populace that hasn't got access to running water. Can you imagine what 24 hours without running water will do in a place like New York or London? There would be fucking carnage.
It'd be
There's only so,
pandemonium.
yeah,
And
there's only so much bottled water that's stashed around places. People run in and steal several $1,000s or pounds worth of trainers just because they can. You know what I mean? And meet that with violence if they try and get stopped. Now imagine people doing that who have got young children who are thinking, I need to give my baby water. I can't produce milk or whatever, so I need water to put in baby formula. It's going to be mass pandemonium. So
well,
that.
the proof is in the pudding. Even in if you look at the different scenes from Christmas, when people go in there to a Walmart and they fight over a big screen TV, what are they going to do when they want food? Think about this, folks. And the other thing is, it can be local. I mean, it doesn't have to be a national thing. It could be something. It doesn't even have to. Let's say they decide that some sort of contaminant naturally. Remember, emergencies can happen from like a hurricane, like Katrina. If the people would add a week or two's worth of stuff, they could have wrote it out, but they didn't. And yet you still had people stealing stuff and looting. And of course, during that time, they were confiscating people's guns. A lot of people don't realize a lot of the facts of that, and yet they were putting people. I can't think of the name of the stadium. It's an American football stadium, not soccer in our lexicon, which is your football, brother. They were putting them in this stadium, and there were numerous rapes and violent occurrences there. So you're getting forced to go into these little centers, unarmed, not able to defend yourself, and predators will be there too, and they'll see their time. It's like the Book of Eli with Denzel Washington. If you remember that whole scene where the husband gets killed and the wife gets raped, and he sees it from afar and comes down. Well, or doesn't see it. I mean, I guess I'm spoiler alert. He was blind, but somehow he could see. Figure that one out. I don't know. But the point being is, there is no hero. 911 or 911 is not going to be able to respond in a mass incident. And a mass incident could be just community. So when seconds count, i.e., your ass is on the line, the cops are minutes away. And remember, the police, even in the UK, they're not there to really protect you. What they're there, in America even, they're not constitutionally bound to protect you. What they are bound to do is to write the report afterwards so that maybe they can solve the crime.
Yeah, it's what you've got to look at, brother, is when people think of the zombie apocalypse, and it was like again, that was used as the pinnacle, and people were looking at that, and then all you've got to do is, like I said earlier, what George S. Patton said, it's just how others have coped in the past with unforeseeable, unpredictable events. You look at Hurricane Katrina, that there, okay, it's just a lesson in history that every prepper, no matter where they live in the world, whether it's in New Orleans, Louisiana, Ohio, the United States, the UK, anywhere, should be looking at that and going, what happened? What went wrong? And then looking into case studies of single events and individual events of how people coped with it or how people didn't cope with it, and go, okay, That's what I will do. That's what I won't do. I'll take something from that. I'm not going to do that, And it's just that being open to learning from everybody. And it might not come from someone in the prepper environment. It just might be someone I go, oh, I carry this because of this. That's a good fucking idea. That okay. What I'll do is I'll incorporate that into my bug out bag, me DC, my stash, whatever. Because you're always learning and you're always prepping, and that's why it's better. You're preparing. You don't prepare for a solid month and then go, okay, I'm good. That's me now. You know what I mean? You're always tweaking your kit, especially if you're a gear queer like me. You're always
Same
getting,
here.
yeah, you're always tweaking. Even though you don't need to, you'll pull out that box and you'll lay it all out, and you'll okay repack it just so I know I can do it in the dark. For some reason, if the lights go off and I don't have a torch at hand, even though I've always got a torch at hand, but again, it's that being prepared for the inevitable, or the unforeseeable. I know where things are. There's another good quote that says it goes along the lines of, "I'd rather prep for 10 years too early than 10 minutes too late." So it's always right. I'll do that. I'll do that. Do it. Even if you're not got a prepper and you're looking at being into or going like coming into the sort of like prepper community, it's the small things. You aren't going to be a prepper overnight. Unless you've got a lot of money and a lot of time on your hands. You know what I mean? Obviously, the third one of that is you've got a lot of information to hand. That's made easy now with this thing that we're on now, the internet. Where back in the day it was sort of like small communities. It was using the CB radios, the ham radios, talking to people. And it is a good community. Every sort of place has got prepper communities. All you've got to do is just look for them. And like I say, you're never going to be 100% prepared. Okay, I've got hordes of kit, and there'll always be something that I don't have, or there'll always be something that I'm not really prepared for. But again, it's that military mindset: improvise, adapt, and overcome. As long as you go, okay, take a step back, and like you said there, brother, it's keeping your head when all around you lose theirs. It's when you become a man, or it's when you become a prepper.
Yep.
You can step back and go, okay, this is going on, this is my plan of action, and now I'm going to implement my plan of action. And it might not be the perfect plan of action. You might make a mistake, and hopefully you come out of that mistake, or those around you come out of that mistake unscathed. Bang, there you go. I've learned something from the past. I won't fucking do that again.
Well, I'll tell you something that really elucidated me. That I just came to. Well, you've seen the inside of my box, bro. I have shit from forever. The government gave me it. Whatever. It's just there, right? Just like you with your service to your nation. We both realized we are, in effect, our own logisticians. And the point is, I'm going through my box, and my boxes within the box, and my bags within the boxes within the box. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I've got one back and one front. So maybe I can carry two bags.
Hmm.
Worst case scenario. And I started going through my kit, and I see I'm not just redundant 2 times, I'm redundant like 4 or 5 or 6 times. And I just decided, you know what, there's certain people I enjoy, I want to support, and I've sent things to them, care packages, I guess is what I call it, but it's bags and, stuff like that. I mean, I'll never forget, I got issued a thing for a phone, and it was anyways, I don't want to get into all that, but certain things I've been issued, and I'm like, okay, all these different kinds of things, and I'm like, here's a bag, brother. It's my bag. Got it from back here. Got this, from back here. And, I guess it's paying it forward because, you know what? In the end, their tax dollars paid for that, but they're friends. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not sending it to some ass clown. As a matter of fact, you'll probably get a care package soon. But my point being is there's just so many people that I think we could help just by giving them a start, giving them a bag, a knife. I did that with two neighbors of mine. They didn't. One guy's a young dude. The other guy's got a very young family of daughters, and I had 2 bags extra for this one, and I gave them 2 bags. One each, and a knife. And I'm like, this builds it from there. And I gave them both lists: buy this, buy that, buy this. Told them how to source it, and that's how we build the community. And it's nothing more than, if your community is stronger, you're more resilient to an issue if it arises.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, you're your own logistician, you're your own. I mean, everything when it comes to that sort of mindset, you've got to be prepared to do everything yourself. You might have family with you, you might have a young family with you, so you're doing it for them as well. So that's what, again, something else that you need to take into consideration. That okay, let's say if it's you and your wife, but then you've got 2 young children, you're carrying their equipment as well. It's reality. We aren't going to throw them to the wolves because we don't. That's what we don't do. We're a civilized nation. Um, if you're
And it's
lucky
your
enough,
progeny, honestly.
yeah, yeah. If you're lucky enough to be able to get your I'm not going to say sons because daughters as well, your children into that mindset of look,
Indeed.
be prepared to do things outside of your comfort zone, and that's everything in life. You step outside that comfort box and you find that life is worth living a lot more. But you're also more prepared to handle things. I think children, if they're brought up in a bedroom in front of a TV screen, are not very well adapted. They can watch all the videos in the world on YouTube, but going out there and doing it, sleeping in a wood for the first time in their lives, starting their own fire. You know what I mean? You're standing back and go, okay, you do that, and you know what I mean? They're doing that fire drill or whatever they're doing, and their hands have got a blister on them. But once they see that smoke and that flame, it's it's a primitive thing. It's like Tom Cruise on Castaway. I am man. I have made fire. It's an achievement. You know what I mean? You can look back on, and it's a memory as well. Going into like that parenthood. It's like I remember that time when my dad took me here, and I was sat there for half an hour, and my hand was bleeding, but I had a fire on the go. And it's something there. It's that sense of achievement. Well, once you can do these little things that might be minute to or even stupid to someone that works in a bank or you know what I mean, lives their life on their phone, stocks and shares, and drives around in a big posh car and uses Uber and never cooks a meal. They're always eating out. It's something that backwards people do, but they're the first in bother. And you look at Katrina, where there was a lot of these people that were reliant on turning taps on. We're reliant on light switches, and they were up shit creek. They're the ones that couldn't fend for themselves and put other people in danger because they had such a level of unpreparedness. Maybe it's not unpreparedness, but a sense of ignorance that this thing that's happening is going to get sorted out by the government. And if you think that was just one place, that wasn't nationwide. Yes, it was quite a large area, but it was just one place. Now imagine that nationwide, where these FEMA trucks.
They've
Everybody's not going to chip in now. Everybody's not going to go. Oh look, Louisiana's fucking under, or New Orleans is fucking underwater. Let's send aid and volunteers and everything. Let's put it nationwide. Everybody all of a sudden becomes an Afghan. All they're asked about is their compound, their fucking village. Everybody outside of that can go and fucking swing.
well
You
they've
know what I mean?
they've done a study on that in the U.S. and they figure you're looking at a 90% in one year. Let's say a worst case scenario, a Carrington event. I'm sorry, like we had in the 1800s, where a sun spot melted down our. It's an EMP basically, melted down all of our telegraph wires, right? Because it traveled through the wires and nobody could communicate. Of course, the people were more off grid back then. That's the name of a magazine in the U.S. I don't know if you guys get it in England. I would suggest you buy it. It's a good magazine, brother. It's like only comes out once every 3 months,
Yeah.
but it's a good magazine. Anyways, and so is American Survival Guide, if you can get a hold of that. Good magazine. The point being is what people fail to realize. Here's one story from Katrina, and it's kind of inspirational if you think about it. There was a young black kid. I don't even think he had his driver's license. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I don't think he was old enough to have his driver's license. But his area was flooding. There were women with babies, of course, because of how our government is giving everybody welfare and making people not be, yeah, exactly, making them reliant on them. And this is under Bush Jr. So, all these people that think I'm right wing, you need to understand I'm an equal opportunity hater. My spaghetti nigger ass has no problem identifying both sides. I'm a greaser, wop, dago. It doesn't matter in half kraut. It doesn't matter. Either way. My point being is this young gentleman went and stole a bus from New Orleans, got these women with their babies on there, drove them to a higher elevation in a different place. He gathered up dollars, to get gas as they were on their way. And he got them to safety and diapers and shit, And in the end, that is American. That is the United Kingdom. That is the actual spirit of our nations, both of our nations, because we have that common bond. And yet, what do? They infuse others that don't have that common bond of being American or UK citizens, that don't even speak the same language, and they expect the same from our government, and yet they contribute nothing. And it's that nanny state mentality, brother, that really is a problem. Anyways, I don't want to get political. That's bullshit. Just forget the political thing. I just gave an inspirational thing and went off on a political tangent. You run with it from here, brother.
Yeah, but like you said, without getting political, mate, what you can do is go on a reality sort of like streak to that conversation there. That point you were making is, yeah, we look at the Afghans, and I'm using Afghan as sort of an example because I've spent quite a bit of time there, and I've seen quite a bit of their society and how that world works. And yeah, we could politicize this by saying what we've done. It's all right us saying, yeah, we've freedoms and all that stuff. We both live in free countries. But we aren't that free. We aren't that free. Let's be honest. We are run by government. Unless we're living off grid and we've got our own fucking bunkers and we live in the forests and eat berries all day long, we aren't free. We have McDonald's. We go to shops. We have gas. We are reliant massively on our government and our society as a whole for everything that we do. Unless you're one of these backwards living off-grid dudes, where you look at places like Afghanistan, where they are the purists, they are the survivalist purists. Yeah, they might have an AK or a generator or a vehicle, but they are purists. They live off the land and have done for thousands of years. Could we do the same? No, could we? Fuck our society. Let's be, and like you said there, if something like that happened, 90% of our population would be rotting in the streets within a short period of time. Through hostile acts of looting, killing, rape. Because again, you look at Katrina, that was a finite event. It was going to come to a close at some point.
Right.
And it was a localized event. When I say localized, it wasn't a huge area. It was a localized event. Where people were pouring funds and the fucking old thoughts and prayers on Facebook and all that stuff into that area. There was millions and millions of dollars. Blackwater turned up and started helicoptering people out and stuff like that. Again, you put that as a national thing. That isn't going to happen. And all of a sudden, all those people are now dead. Because they haven't got Blackwater helicopters lifting them out. They haven't got $200 million worth of food and aid coming in from the rest of the nation because everybody's looking after number one, their community. So to politicize it, without politicizing it, is we aren't that free. If you think about it, when it comes to that mentality, is because we are so reliant on our capitalist nation, you know what I mean? Our way of life, of convenience, of turning taps on and things like that, and that's why preppers. It's sort of like that smug feeling you get when, again, like I said earlier, something goes wrong in your everyday life, but you're prepared for it. You can pull, you got your keyring out, and you can jimmy open that door, or you can, whatever. It's that smug feeling, and but without being too smug about it, it then makes people look at you and go, "He was ready for that. He did that. So maybe he's onto something." You
Well,
know, which
there.
is always a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. There's a brother of mine, and I use the quote often, and I will always attribute it to him. Darren. I'm not getting into his last name. I hope to do a show with him. But there was a thing that I tried to help, and I love it, folks. If you guys find new survival skills and survival guide online, you find those two things. I was a part of that for a while, and anyways, during that time, Darren's from Australia, and he came up with this lexicon and this quote that I use a lot: "You can only fuck with the cock you got." You're not. God's not going to give you a new cock to fuck women with if it's too short. Unfortunate for you. Um, if it's whatever, it's a thing that I guess the reason why he said it, at least the way I interpret it, is you're born with what you have. You have to make the best out of what you have. And, you know, you have to do your best with what you have. And I guess that's why I use that, because it really sums it up that no matter what happens, adversity, positivity, uh, you're only able to do it with your mental functions you have. You're only able to do it with the physical limitations you may have. But still, you can do it. And that's the thing. My channel, I've tried to be positive about everything, and I want it to be. I want better men, and so do you, and so does everybody who comes on here. That's the whole point of this show. And, it really disturbs me that the division I've seen, um, I would love to say I see it from the right, but right now we're seeing it more from the left. And that's kind of disturbing, where they're saying everybody's a fascist Nazi, and yet they act more Nazi and fascist than the Nazis and fascists. It's just hilarious. And they get support from our media, and they get cover from politicians. I mean, I don't know how it is in the UK, but it's kind of disgusting, actually. When truth, what's that Orwell quote? Truth is the last, or truth is the first victim. That's what we're looking at right now. And channels like mine, and with you coming on and being a guest and an awesome, great guy who I know, it breaks my heart that more people haven't woken up. And I guess that's the entire point of what I do. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's not trying to. I do it. Well, I did do it when I was at work quite a lot. With some of the guys that were under my command. I was working for me. I don't like using under my command, because I was one of these leaders where I'd always ask instead of tell. I always think you get the best out of people if you ask someone to do something rather than tell them to do something, because we aren't brainless fucking machines. And
And you get a certain pride in work and buy-in, brother. I mean, that's some wisdom. Keep going.
yeah. Yeah, so when I used to, I sit down and I used to speak to my lads and that, some of them would be quite sort of like, without going into it too much, sort of like blinded to the other arguments. They had their own narrative. I'm talking like young soldiers now, working class soldiers from the north of England, you know, where they have certain views. They've got the Tommy Robinson, the English Defence League, sort of like the right wing views, and I'm just like, okay, take that on board. Yes, okay. Well, think about this. Think about this. Think about this, and it's opening their eyes without trying to make them politicise too much. But again, when you've got your media force feeding this left wing narrative or whatever
Right.
narrative they want to feed you, you know, it's. I'm saying to my guys, you will see this, especially in your line of work, where you see what's going on in your communities, what's going on in the nation. Then you're looking left and right when you're actually going abroad and going, people are crying about this shit. I'm watching a fucking 2 year old with no hands and legs because she's had her fucking hands and legs chopped off by some rebel group in fucking Central Africa. Or
Right.
I'm watching this massive sort of humanitarian fucking plight because of this disease that's ravaging this East Timor jungle community. You know what I mean? So it's we've got the benefit of seeing a wider sort of portion of the world, and these arguments are very small and insignificant, you know. And the big one I'm finding at the minute is this sort of like what I laugh at is this sort of like gender thing, you know. And I don't want to digress because we're on prepping, you know what I mean. This is where we're at. We're on prepping, but what you've got to think of is the bigger picture, and that's what I'm trying to think of. Is people are so tied up in being misgendered or this song has offensive lyrics towards women or it's very patriotic. You know what I mean? It's you've got
Look,
to look outside that. Yeah, you've got to look outside it and think bigger picture things. Where okay, let's say if it does, the world falls on its ass tomorrow. Let's say we have a massive sort of solar flare, the world gets knocked out, and all of a sudden there is no internet. You know, who the fuck is going to be asked about being misgendered? You know what I
well,
mean?
I mean, if we're both honest, we have to admit to everybody right now that we're both lesbians trapped in a man's body, and it's
I'm
okay.
non-binary. I'm non-binary. I woke up a male this morning, but now I'm pansexual.
No, no, no,
So
no, no.
you just misgendered me, brother. You misgendered me. I
No.
can't call you brother. I'll call you sibling because
Yeah.
brothers sort of like that patriarchy and all that good stuff. So you misgendered me, sibling.
Well, I don't care. You're a lesbian trapped in a man's body, so shut the fuck up. But the funny part
Uh,
is, it's that moronacy, and it really is getting caught into the minutia. And this is what communism. Anyways, damn, I will bring
we're
us right.
politicizing it, aren't we?
I'll bring it right back. Look, this is a communist thing. It comes from their playbook in all their playbooks. The Kalergi plan. It comes from people who
Communist
can
Manifesto.
Communist Manifesto, Brzezinski. We can go to the right wing too on their little book. I can't think of the author's name right now. It eludes me, and I don't care. The point is, this has been a long term plan. This is not accidental. And with that being said, let's shut down the politics and just realize that Baz and Shuffy are now admitting to being lesbians trapped in
Lesbians.
a man's body.
Yeah. Moving on from that, I think what then you've got to do is how can we sort of like make our community bigger, you know, as preppers. You've got to start at home. You know, you've got to start within your own
Indeed.
house, within your household, or like you did with your neighbours. If your household are preppers, or your wife will never admit to being a prepper. You know, she just sort of like raises an eyebrow when you've bought your 58th knife or another pair of fucking Gucci boots or whatever. She's the one that raises an eyebrow, but she's like, okay, he's keeping it in the garage. It's out of the way. It keeps him out of my fucking hair. I get to sit and watch soap operas or do whatever she does while you're sharpening knives and fucking restocking your box for the 58th time that week. Um, but you've got to sort of like look outside that family then and think, I need to spread the love, you know, like you did with a couple of knives and a couple of bags. And it's just giving people that advice. As long as that advice is, look, I'm no expert at this. You find your own journey, but you want help on that journey, I'll be with you. And I've done it with my son. My daughter's too young to do it. And my ex-wife um, didn't really have much sort of interest in it because she knew I was all over it, you know. And she knew that I'd keep her right, you know. But with my son,
Yep.
it's I'm getting him into the mentality of, look, mate, you need to be prepared, you know, for certain things, and it might be somewhat fucking crazy, but I think a really good sort of like starting point is getting them interested. Is you sit down And the best place to do this is when you go camping with someone, because you're
Yep.
already in that environment. You've sat in front of a warm fire, you've got your own shelter up, you're frying sausages or making marshmallows or whatever, so you're already in that sort of the ambience is there and that. And then you just talk to him and think, okay, think about what's the fucking worst thing that can happen. And even though he's 10-year old, I sit and listen to his sort of opinions on things and go, and even though I might have heard that opinion a million times, you've always got to add sort of like legitimacy to what he's saying to
Right.
keep them involved. And as if, because then if you're giving a positive feedback to someone, you know what I mean, going, yeah, it's a good idea, mate. You're maybe, what about doing this, mate? What about doing this? And then it's like the seed is his idea. That idea is his seed. He's planted that in his own, and all you've done is water that seed, and then it grows. But if you're turning around and going, no, mate, that's fucking wrong. You do this, 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 and this, and it's just going to go. He's going to think, well, as a 10-year-old, it's going to be, okay, I'm hurt because my dad's just rubbished my idea. You know what I mean? If they're older than that, they're just going to think, Dad, you're a prick. You know what I mean? There's no need to make me feel like a cunt. But it's getting them involved, and it's their ideas. You've got to add sort of legitimacy to them, and it's getting them involved and giving them a sense of achievement. Like what I did with my son, I said, okay, we'll go to the garage where I kept all my kit. I said, pick yourself a bag out. Okay, then I opened my boxes, and I said, okay, we'll make your own bag. What do you think you're going to need? Let's say
Right.
if, and because he's a kid, I always use a zombie apocalypse. He's seen The Walking Dead and all that good stuff, and that's what kids like. And let's be honest, we all like a bit of that on the inside, because once a zombie apocalypse happens, it's just a good excuse to shoot motherfuckers in the face, especially motherfuckers that you don't like. Yeah, he turned. But
Right.
it's that. Okay, in the zombie apocalypse, mate, what do you think you'd need to live out in the woods? And he's going, okay, I'd need one of them, Dad. Okay, then put that in your bag, mate. Put that in your bag, put that in your bag. Now put your bag on and get your straps adjusted. Is that comfy, son? No, it's not. Okay, let's unpack it then. And where do you think you should put that? It's getting them massively involved and getting them acting from themselves, because again, you're planting those seeds, because we're not going to be here forever, brother. If we're lucky, we might be in the next town, we're in the next state. If we're unlucky, we'll have passed on to the next life,
Well,
and our children are offending from themselves.
the
But they'll always think back to that element where you've said that little seed that you've planted, and that confidence has grown hopefully over the years, So that's where I'm at the minute, and it's a fucking amazing journey that I'm on with my son, and I love it, because he's coming up with his own ideas and things I've never thought of, and I'm like, fuck, that's a
yep.
good idea. Yeah. I'll do that, I'm learning off a 10-year-old. Again,
Oh,
like we said, we are not the experts. Nobody is the expert on this. You know what I mean? There is one or two experts out there in their field, and I use people like Ray Mears, over here. If you've ever seen anything with Ray Mears, everybody's heard of Bear Grylls. Bear Grylls is good.
Bear
What he does,
Grylls. Yeah, whatever.
he does a lot of shit that would end up with him laid at the bottom of a waterfall with a fractured spine in a fucking survivalist situation and
Right.
perishing as rodents and fucking carry and eat his slowly dying corpse. Where we've got someone called Ray Mears, who is one of the guys that teaches special forces and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I always trust a fat survivalist, if you know what I mean, because obviously he can live off the land. He's a fucking fat lad.
Oh,
You know.
I know. I know. There's a guy we have in the U.S. and well, there's two guys actually, Canterbury, and also Lone Survivor. I can't think of his damn name. Damn it! I'm pissed. I can't remember his name. But both of those are legit dudes. And Christopher Nurgis actually studied. This will take everybody back to the 70s. You guys can look him up. Christopher Nurgis studied under a guy who they used to always make fun of in the 70s. And he wrote a book called Hunting for the Wild Asparagus, I think it is. I think that was the title. I got the book somewhere. I don't want to grab it. Why am I mind dumping his name? Anyways, just look for Hunting for the Wild Asparagus. It's a good book, and Christopher Nurgis has written many good books, and he's more of like a Yul Gibbons. That was the guy's name. Yul, Uel Gibbins. Yule Gibbons from the 70s. And they used to lampoon him on Saturday Night Live, saying they had some dude dress up that looked similar to him and grab some bark off a tree and eat it. You know, that kind of bullshit. Um, I would agree with you. There are experts on wild foods and stuff, and there's food all around you all the time. That's the point. But the bigger point is you're exactly right. What you said about your 10-year-old. Think about this. I realize this as a 21, 22-year old, however old I was when me and my bro had that talk, and he said, "You're a fucking survivalist," and got me thinking after the indoctrination I had to become a communist and a liberal. And I don't say liberal badly because you can still be a classical liberal like Tim Pool. Tim Pool is, he may be to the left of me and I may despise some of his opinions, but he actually comes out on the right side. And it's no different than a Jeffersonian liberal. Thomas Jefferson, for those in the UK that you'll share this with, they'll be able to hear why. Um, that's the point. The point is bringing people together within your nation. I mean, brother, anyways, I don't want to get into everything, but I'm just saying, just imagine your kid was 10 years old, or is 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
And he's opening his mind. Think about me getting my eagle, believing everything I thought was real, but still believing a different political ideology. And there comes a point when those two things clash so hard, and the juxtaposition that makes you change is you thinking. Once you're actually thinking, because liberalism, honestly, not liberalism, progressivism, let me rephrase that. And I have no love for neocons or neoprogs, neoconservatives or neo-progressives, because they haven't conserved anything and we've not progressed, we've regressed. But the point being is, when you all of a sudden realize, wow, and I'll never forget, like I said, when it started, he said, talked about Rush Limbaugh, and I said, "Oh, that fat blowhard, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He just da da da." And he's like, "You've never listened to him." And of course, as a progressive, liberal, communist, whatever you want to call me, at that time, I was like, "Oh, you must be one of them fucking survivalists." And then he throws my shit right back in my face. That got me thinking. I was so pissed, even though I was lying to him, I was more pissed that he threw my real shit back at me and said, "Hey, you're a moron." And it started me thinking and researching. And that's where freedom lives. Both sides of the aisle, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, true, brother. True. Yeah, I'm a great believer in you can learn from a lot from both sides of the argument. You can learn a lot from both sides of um, type of person, the negative and the positive. If obviously you're always going to learn more from a positive person. I'm not going to use mentor because or teacher or parent, but anybody positive that could teach you something. You're always going to learn more because you're going to be less defensive. You're going to be open more to learning, and the chances are that the type of stuff that they're going to teach you, whether it's correct or not, you're always going to take something away from that. Where if someone's negative and they're going, "That's fucking bullshit," you're just straight away your defenses are up, and you are not willing to learn. You shut that door, but you might see something that they do, and it's like that is not what to do. You've learned something, and then you can expand on that. You can either go down the same route they are and do that differently, or you can just go, I am doing what they do because they're going to get themselves killed, or they're going to get this person killed, they're going to get others killed, and it's just a bad practice.
Yep.
So I try and teach my son or anybody. I try and teach them with positivity. You know, I mean, I've been in this. I've got the blessing of not just my army career behind me, but for a lot of those years, I've been an instructor. to a, well, blow me on trumpet, to a quite high level in our military. Um, so I have instructional ability and qualities behind me. And when you're teaching a 10-year-old, you can strip those down to the bare bones, of how to teach properly. And it's all about enthusiasm. If you give the enthusiasm to people, you enthuse people in wanting to learn and wanting to carry on what you're learning in their own capacity, then you're on to a winner. If you're going to be negative and just pick at them, you're doing that wrong, then the chances are they're going to give that up quite quickly. And in the our community of prepping, if you turn someone away from prepping, when down the line, if something happens, you could be that could have like serious consequences. They might not be prepared for that event. And Katrina's a good one. Certain events, if people had like food and clean water and just yada yada yada, a lot of people might not have died, might not have perished, or could have helped more people. But again, it's down to the individual, brother. I think that's all I've got to say on that matter.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And with that being said, we will do another show, and we still have to finish up our mercenary contractor talk. But this one was more relevant, and it would have happened. I wanted to do a whole cacophony of shows with people on my 200th. I just am a shitty. I don't know how to edit. I don't know what things to do. So I couldn't make it one big long ass show. And instead of doing that, I guess I'm going to break it up into a couple longer shows. And of course, me and Baz can do a smaller show after this, and then we'll go into long form again. Cause that small show, man, that look at some of the numbers on it, and it's not about numbers. It's about reaching the people who follow me, and I like my small channel. Don't nobody out there think I want to grow. Stay away if you think I want to grow and you think I'm doing anything other than I don't monetize. I do not want to monetize, because then all of a sudden you're not listening to me without ads. And if they ever put ads on it, it's because, like the last show, I threw up a thing to support Gary Sinise's project to help, first responders. But I'm sure some lawyer out there will, monetize it so that they can get the money from it. That's what they do now, or they'll shut my channel down. But good thing is, I have all these things copied. They're not going to shut me up. They're not going to shut Baz up. They're not going to shut BZ up. They're not going to shut Baz or Bez up. They're not going to shut anybody on my channel up, because I've always got BitChute. Same name, same Kaiser's Castle. It's the reality. And with that being said, Baz, I'm telling you right now, brother, it's the wolf at your door that you don't see coming. And that wolf is somebody you may know, you may not know. Just don't become food. And with that being said, thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. I'm going to raise the drawbridge up again. I'm going to give you enough time to clear off my big orange couch. Finish up your coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation. And, as I always say, much love to you. Be safe, be well, be blessed. With that being said, Shuff out.